All right. Okay, good morning, everybody. It's exactly 9 o'clock today, Tuesday. What is today? September 23rd. Oh, my gosh. Today's my dad's birthday, you guys. So maybe you can call him and wish him happy birthday. I'm not too sure how old he's turning, but I'm sure he feels like he's 25. Anyhow, which actually is kind of really relevant to the conversation we're going to be having today. But anyhow, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So, good morning, and thank you, everybody, for getting on the call on time. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be building on last week's call. And I want to apologize because we had trouble recording last week's call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, just for the first 5-6 minutes, I'm going to recap what we talked about last week so that we can build on this whole concept this week. And for those of you who text me, I hope you got an opportunity to watch the video that I sent you, because this stuff, the whole science of neuroscience, the whole study of how your brain works and the patterns that have you be who you are, it's just fascinating to me. I've actually been researching and studying this for a couple of months now, but it's just, to me, it's just mind-boggling how your mind can literally manifest, control everything and anything you want in your life. And so for those of you who did not text me, if you want to text me, I will send you the link. I'm trying to get it onto my website so that we can just have it there for you to take a look at. So if that's the case, I'll definitely go on to entrepreneurintelligence.com, and I'm going to try to get that on there tonight. But enough said. So let's go ahead and do a really quick recap of what we talked about last week, and that was we started looking at what is this whole science of, or the whole study of neuroscience. And for those of you who have read the books, Think and Grow Rich, for those of you who have not, that's a must-read book or audiobook. You want to listen to it over and over again because the stuff is absolutely amazing. And this has been something that Napoleon Hill pointed to many, many years ago, and that was how literally you can think your way into anything. And he gave us tools in that book on how to go about that. Now, there's many doctors, but this particular doctor that I have been doing a lot of research on, his name is Joe Dispenza. And the video that I sent you guys is all about talking about in a way that is understandable for the regular person who does not really know much about science, if you can say it that way, right? Like kindergarten talk, I like to say. And that is that, our brains are literally like just a bunch of mapped out patterns. So since we were born, actually, one of the audios that I sent a couple of you guys even talked about the fact that even before you were born, the conditions that your mother and your father were in, like let's say, and I gave this example, that let's say if your parents lived in a very hostile environment where survival was something like very, very important, like maybe they lived in a warfare or like in the middle of a warfare or, I don't know, somewhere where there's a lot of gun shooting and stuff like that, and your mom and your dad are constantly living in fear. And when you were made, right, when you're conceived, the cells that are being united, the sperm and the egg that's being united, are of two human beings that live in total fear. So the baby that's going to be, that's being made inside the mother, literally has to be made with the cells and the DNA and the brain patterns of somebody that will need to survive when it comes out to the world, because it's going to come out to a world full of fear and survival. Therefore, while she's pregnant, literally that environment is already being embedded in the baby's brain, in the baby's nervous system. And science has actually been able to prove this, which I think is just absolutely fascinating, which is why it's so important that when somebody's pregnant, that they really take care of their state of mind, because of the chemicals that are being released. It goes down to the embryo. So we talked a lot about that last week, and how, since you were, being conceived, how your brain was constantly being molded into the kind of human being that you were going to be, the way you were going to think. So you inherit your parents' thought patterns, behavior patterns, emotional patterns, right? Now, that's not to say that you can't change that. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know how to do is, okay, well, I'm aware that I am I am aware that I behave and that I think this way. But I now know, especially with us doing so much work on these calls, and you guys, it's been now a year this month. So, with all this, knowledge that we've been doing, development, personal development, reading the books, going to the seminars, going to the classes, being self-aware, right? Being conscious of our behaviors. A lot of us, and I'll speak for myself, okay? I'm actually going to go ahead and take this class I'm going to share personal things with you guys. And that is, I got to a point where I was like, I didn't like it. The way that I was being, the way that I was thinking, the way that I was acting, the way that I was feeling were not something that worked for me anymore. And about 2 years ago, actually even before that, when I started doing the business, I started becoming aware of certain behaviors that I was like, oh, I don't like that about me. Oh, that doesn't work. Like, oh, I want to change that about me, But the question is, how do I? Because we have these patterns in our brains that have us be unconsciously, subconsciously, are programmed in us that have us be a certain way. So we talked a lot about that last week, and, I'll open up the lines at the end of the call, and I would love to hear what is it that you discovered for yourself. And we talked about the fact that one of the things of the audio that I sent you guys was how Joe Dispenza literally has proven, they've taken brain scans and have somebody, like let's say you've got this certain behavior, your certain way of being, and you're acting, in the form of A, right? You're like acting all these patterns, let's just call them pattern A's, right? And all these patterns in your brain are firing off, that have you be a certain way. Then all of a sudden, which unfortunately many times it takes some dramatic event, some like, 9/11 type of an event for people to realize, like, this doesn't work for me anymore. Sometimes, and it's unfortunate, but many times it takes something drastic for a human being to have the desire and to put the energy into changing, okay? Because most of the time we're just going about life thinking this is just the way it's going to be. Then all of a sudden something happens, a breakup, a divorce, something drastic like the 9/11 situation, or maybe something for you is like, I'm just going to say this ridiculous example, but let's say you're like drinking and driving all the time, all of a sudden you have this huge accident, and it takes something big like that for the human to say, this doesn't work anymore. These ways of behaving, these patterns that I've got, whatever it is, it could even be something like you look at your bank account and you're like negative and you're like, this doesn't work anymore. Where you get so fed up with the way things are and who you've been being in your life that all of a sudden there's so much pain in the human body that causes something in our brain to say, it's time to change routes. It's time to change these patterns. Now, from getting to the patterns of A, let's just call the next patterns would be pattern D's, right? A, B, C, D, D as in dog. So now you've got to make this huge leap all the way to these patterns called D patterns, okay? Now, one of the things that science has been able to prove is that because you're now desiring new ways of being and new ways of acting and new ways of thinking, therefore new sensations, new chemical reactions are going on in your brain and your body that are so unfamiliar to you that it causes you to be extremely uncomfortable. So much so that if you're going from, let's just say from A to D, as in dog, if you're going from A to D, it's like this bridge that's dark, this forest, if you will, that's dark. It is full of trees, and you don't know your way. And you start stepping into this dark forest, and you're like, where am I going? And there's so much levels of uncertainty that very few have the courage and the guts and the will and the strength and the emotional stamina to continue walking through that forest. Most human beings take 5-6 steps forward, and they're like, I don't know where I'm going. And it has to have you surrender. And most people will not. So they will say, this is too scary. Now, you don't do this consciously, but you're wanting to change, and you're taking 5-6 steps forward, but all of a sudden you're like, this does not work. I don't, something about you just is so uncomfortable. You can't tolerate the uncomfortableness, the uncertainty. And you turn around and you go back to the old patterns, and you're like, oh, now I feel better. Now I feel good. Well, yeah, because you're going back to those familiar ways of being, thinking, so familiar chemicals that are being released by your brain. That's why you keep having the same life. Now, it is way easier to talk about this, but I'll tell you my personal experience. About 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, a year and whatever, 2000 in December will be 2 years. I met this coach. Her name is Olga. And, I started working with her because I really, where I was in my life at that moment and who I was being and the thoughts and the behaviors and the feelings that I had, something really drastic happened in my life that summer that had me, I talked about some of these calls, that had me be pretty upset, pretty depressed, if you will. And I'm just so fortunate, and I thank God every day that I met her, because those levels of stress and those levels of emotion that, if they're suppressed, can cause a manifestation in illnesses in your body, such as cancer, thyroid problems, things like that, right? The body will find a way to release these emotions, and lucky for me, I found her. And I started, working with her and really going through a lot of processes of Okay, that was so weird. I hope you guys were listening. Hang on a second. Hold on. Are you guys still there?
Yes.
Yes. Oh,
yes.
Yeah. What happened? Okay, hold on. Something just went crazy on my phone. Anyhow, what was I telling you guys? Oh, and so what ended up happening was, as I was working with her, there were times that she had me do certain exercises, certain things that were so ridiculously uncomfortable. And I have to tell you, it was so uncomfortable that it would bring me to tears, like literally to tears. And I remember one day I slammed my hand down, and I was like, I'm so tired of this. And she used to always tell me, you're such a warrior, you're such a warrior. And I'm like, okay, well, I sure don't feel like no freaking warrior, right? Because the way that I had always been being, my definition of a warrior is you just push through whatever you have to push through. And one of the things that Joe Dispenza has talked about is, your body is a vessel. It's a vessel that holds certain emotions, that holds certain levels of energy. And so one of the things, you want to write this down. I love this phrase. Hold on a second. Where is it? I just wrote it down. I just completely lost my train of thought. Anyway, I'll find it. But anyhow, that is that, oh God, where is it? Hang on a second. Here we go. Is that if you want to start asking yourself, is my body a big enough container to hold my vision, to hold the dream that I'm wanting to manifest? Is my body a big enough container to hold the expectation, to hold the shift that I was going through? And I remember telling her, I'm tired, because literally my body was emotionally drained from all the new things that I was going through, the shift that I personally desired to have in my life, the new way of thinking, the new ways of behaving, and like I said, I was literally to tears many times, and I'd slam my hand one day, and I'm like, Olga, I'm so sick of this. And she gave me this example of the forest. She's like, see, you're walking through this dark forest, and you have to surrender. You have to surrender, because this is something that you've never been through. But she told me, she's like, but I want you to know I've walked through this forest, and you just have to trust me. And you just have to have faith that you're going to get through this forest in a safe way, right? Because that's what I'm saying. As human beings, we're like machines of survival. So she told me, she's like, you just have to trust me that we're going to get through this forest, and that I know the way, and I'm going to get you through it safe. And what's on the other side of this forest is exactly what we're working towards. And, lucky for me, I didn't give up, because let me tell you, there were times I would get on my calls with her and say, I don't want to talk to you right now. And she's like, it's okay, that's fine. And we would still do our session, right? But the thing of the matter is, going from my patterns of A through the forest to get to the patterns of D, what Joe Dispenza has actually been able to scientifically prove is that when and if you have the courage and the stamina and the emotional energy to get through this dark forest, as uncomfortable as it seems and as unreal as it may appear to be, and unhopeful sometimes, and all those emotions of uncertainty, if you keep walking through it, eventually when you're up to the other side, the old patterns, the brain scans have shown that patterns A will die. They will die. And to me, that's just so fascinating, because if you think about it, this is how transformation happens, right? Like, change is taking a few steps forward, and then, boom, you go back to how you used to be. That's why they have this phrase, right? The more you change, the more things stay the same. The more you resist, the more it persists. But when you surrender, and I know it's not easy, you guys, I'm telling you from personal experience, it was not easy. But I can also tell you that anything that's worth having is not easy, right? But if you can walk through that forest and get to the other side, science has been able to prove that the old patterns will die. So, to me, that's just mind-boggling, right? So let's talk about, so now you've got the foundation of all of this, talk about what does this exactly mean, and how can we get some practical ways of doing this, okay? So here's the thing you want to know, that your body, like I said, your body's a vessel, right? And when your body can't hold that energy, so for example, you're going through that forest, okay? When you don't have the physical stamina and endurance and withhold, your body, when it cannot hold that energy, things start to leak out. Things such as, some people might start giggling, like they get all nervous, right? So for example, let's just say, we say, okay, you're about to go up to do the HOM. So this is really great on the level of leadership, for you to understand not only what happens to you, but for you to understand what happens to people when you ask them to do certain things, and why they act, quote unquote, so funny, or why they do inappropriate behaviors, okay? And that is, if their body cannot hold that amount of energy or that sensation, those chemical reactions that they're feeling at that moment, they will have spillouts. They'll start giggling, they'll start fidgeting, they have all these tics, okay? So when people get nervous, it's because their body can't hold the amount of energy that it takes to have that transformation occur. Now, most people just go, oh, no, I can't do it, and they start giggling, and they sit down. But it is for those warriors, those strong, courageous people that actually go, you know what? Yes, and they start giggling, and they start fidgeting, and they get all nervous, but you do it anyway. When that happens, okay, when you can't hold something in your body, and you have that concept that we want to, but our body just can't hold it, and there's all these leakage outs that come out that are expressed in different ways, and you do it anyway, you've literally told your brain a whole new pattern has just emerged. Now, it's not enough to do it just once, and as many of you guys know, when you do it and you show your story for the very first time at an HOM, and you go up and, you almost feel like you have to go to the restroom, and then you do it the second time, you do it the third time, it gets easier and easier. The reason being is because that pattern that you have now, the first time that you did it, the new pattern that emerged gets reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. Now this, I'm giving you an example of sharing your story, but this could be doing your personal contact. This could be walking up to one person and saying, hey, may I please give you this flyer? Hey, may I please give you this invitation? You've got to understand that if your body cannot hold the energy, you will feel certain sensations. Things will spill out. And you having this awareness tells you something new is about to emerge. Something new is about to be born, and you got to push through it and do it anyway. Okay? So it is clear, very clear, that we have this habit patterns. There we go. These habit patterns, that we want to change, that we may want to change. So let's say you have these patterns, these habit patterns of not following through, or you have these habit patterns of saying you're going to do one thing and not doing it. Like, okay, today I'm going to do this and then you don't, or whatever. We have these habituated patterns, and we want to change those patterns. But here's the thing. To become aware of these things and the things that we want to change is not enough, okay? Become aware is the first step. But there is more than just powering through them, okay? And say, well, I'm just going to, I'm going to really just push my way through this. Because our bodies are living, here it is, here's the phrase. Our bodies are living maps of our subconscious. You guys have got to write that down. When I heard that, I'm like, oh, that is so true. Because all of our subconscious ways of being, thinking, all those patterns, our body, meaning like your legs, your body, okay, it's a living map of your subconscious, okay? So when we don't have the capacity, we have that because we've been trained in a particular way. We've been training our bodies. Our subconscious mind has been training our bodies to not follow through, has been training our body, and here's the thing. I'm talking about the things you don't do because sometimes those are the things we want to change, right? Well, actually, those are always the things we want to change. But let's talk about the patterns of, some of you guys might have a habitual way of being that you have absolutely no problem working out. And like for you, it's like second nature. And you're like, because you have been trained in a particular way and the capacity of your nervous system is so ingrained that your body's like a machine literally obeying the subconscious demands. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. There are things in your life that you do without effort, things that you just, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's working out. One particular one everybody I think we can relate to is driving. There is no thinking about how to drive. You was at first, and then you got better, and now it's so, sometimes you drive and you're like, how did I get home? Because your subconscious mind completely takes over your body, and it, it breaks when it needs to break, and you get the picture, right? So here's the thing. We've been trained a particular way, and we have the capacity to do the things. Your body can hold certain capacity to do certain things, but there are certain things we don't have the nervous system to hold that much energy, that much emotion, and it shows up in resistance. So while driving, there's no resistance there. You get in the car and off you go. But let's say I say, okay, we're going to do a presentation, and you've never done it, and you've got this pattern that says, I'm shy, or you've got this pattern that says, I don't talk to people, or I'm not a good speaker, or whatever it is. And your body can't hold that energy. When I tell you you're about to do a presentation and you get all those sensations in your stomach and it's turning and you feel like you have to go to the bathroom, right? Because your nervous system can't hold that much energy and that emotion, it shows up in you resisting, okay? And it shows up the way, and you see it with people. You see it how they interact. Some people even might get angry. Some people even yell. Some people just shut down. There's so many different ways that when somebody is acting out, you guys as leaders of your organizations must understand, not only for yourself, but for your team members, that when they act this way, all that means is that they can't hold the energy at that moment, and there's resistance, survival, So to me, this is something you really have to get, because to hold that discomfort and to hold that feeling and let it play out, okay, let it play, and it will have you be large enough in the future to hold anything you want at a different level. So if you think about, for those of you who have been doing the business for a while, who you are today is not the person you were when you started. Who you know yourself to be, what you know that you're capable of at this level in your life is very different than you were when you started. I know many of you guys on the phone, I saw you guys starting, it's like to get you to tell your story was like pulling teeth. To get you guys to say your name on this call. Some of you don't even say your name, and I can't even see you, right? But then why? See, when I saw this, I'm like, this is what happens to humans. That energy, I'm like, okay, you guys say your name and where you're calling from. Some of you guys, I'm sure you get this like, okay, like no fear, like, hey, this is so-and-so calling from so-and-so, right? But some of you guys, it's like if I asked you to give me your child or something, it's like you get this that you can't. And now I understand it's because your body can't hold that energy. So I encourage you guys, when you have this feeling, when you have these throw-up moments, when you have this nervous feeling, no, this is about to go down, right? Something's about to emerge. Something's about to open up. See, and you want to start asking yourself this: is my body a big enough container, right? Because we're like a vessel, right? Is my body a big enough container to hold my vision of what I want to create in my life? Is my body a big enough container to hold those dreams that I want to manifest? To hold the expectations I have of myself? To hold the shift I want to create in my life? You know, and to hold those changes. And I love this. I'm gonna actually read this. He said, is my body a big enough container to hold all the shifts I am desiring that are not yet reinforced out there by the outside world? I thought that was so beautiful. I'm going to say that again, okay? Actually, this is a quote from Barnett Bain, movie director. And he said, as he was being interviewed with Joe Dispenza, he said, Barnett Bain said, this makes so much sense because as I'm making my movies, as I'm wanting to create something, as I'm, he's doing a movie called The Milton Secret. It's a book. It's from a written book of Eckhart Tolle. So Barnett Bain is making a movie on that, and he's like, oh, this is beautiful because the question is, is my body a big enough container to hold all the shifts and all the manifestations that I want that are not yet reinforced by the outside world? In other words, they're not real yet, but am I a big enough container to hold all those dreams and all those desires that are not yet reality? And I just thought that was so amazing. And so this morning I'm going to give you some tools. One way to start increasing your container is, as for those of you who listen to the audio that I sent you guys, is that, meditating in the morning. But here's the thing, you don't meditate, just sit down and close your eyes, okay? But you've got to start visualizing what it is that you want in your life. So, for example, this morning I held a certain vision of certain areas of my life. Certain things, I actually go through the core four. I go through my body, my spirituality, my relationships, and my business. And I create a vision for each of those four areas. And I hold them to the point where your goal is to have your brain tell your body what it wants, right? And to have your body have the feelings and the chemical reactions that you already have it. Because when your body and your mind align, okay, and I love that when Joe Dispenza said, when your brain knows what it wants and your body feels that it already has it, like really it's already here, watch out, because it's just a matter of time for you to get it. But it has to be aligned, okay? So one of the things that you can do is literally meditate in the morning and close your eyes and just literally visualize exactly what you want. And with practice, your goal is to have your brain fire off those certain chemicals that has your body feeling like it already has it. And for those of you who did the morning ritual with me in Dallas and in Fresno, that is something you can do, right? Now, if you don't have the time to do the whole 15 minutes of the 3 songs, you can just sit in your chair and literally just tell your brain you're at the extravaganza, getting that new pin, and you visualize it. Now, here's the thing, though. You've got to also think about what is it that you're going to do, not so much like in detail, but say, okay, I am going to build my Herbalife business to generate, whatever, $10,000 a month, whatever it is. You can't just say I want $10,000. You got to also kind of really think about what is it that you're willing to exchange to get it. It doesn't have to be detailed because your body, your brain, the universe will figure out how to give it to you. But what you do need to do is you can't just say, okay, well, I just want $10,000 and have it wishful thinking. There's got to be something you're going to do to get that. I want to build my Herbalife business to generate X amount of money. I want to build blah, blah, blah to have this. I think you kind of get the picture. Okay, we have 1 more minute. So here's the last thought, okay? and that is this. You want to write this down if you can, okay? Here we go. It says the grand movement with things, or the grand objective, okay, if you will, is to have the alignment of your vision with your senses and that possible future you want to create. So when you can have the alignment of your vision, in other words, the thoughts, like what you're wanting to create, and the senses, the feelings that go through your body, and that possible future that you want to create, something magical will happen. So it's building that relationship with the new mind, okay, like the D that we were talking about, that you're wanting to create, and like but erasing that old pattern of like the A's, as I was talking about. So you're going from A to D. When you can have those things align, okay, the great vessel of your body in alignment with your mind, just magic will happen. This is the last I'm going to give you, okay, and that is this. Thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. Okay, so thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body. And the way you think, the way you feel, gives you the way you're being at any moment in time. So the way you think and the way you feel gives you your way of being at any moment in time. So it's exactly 9:31 now. Sorry, I went over it by a minute. So hang on, let me end the recording, and I'm going to open up the lines for any questions or comments. Hold on.